Hi, everyone. I'm Jess, and I'm the content manager here at Course Report. Course Report is the resource for helping people find the right coding bootcamps for them. If you haven't used Course Report yet, check it out. I mean, you can research the best coding bootcamps all over the world, find out which coding languages you should learn, where to apply, and how to fund your very own coding bootcamp experience. Today, I'm so happy to have Cameron Greer joining us to talk about his coding bootcamp experience. Cam graduated from Codesmith in 2020 and then launched his own decentralized audio-visual curation community, which is called Heads. So thanks so much for talking with me today, Cam. I definitely want to dive into how you became a tech entrepreneur after Codesmith. But first, let's start with what you were up to before Codesmith. I saw that you had some experience working in tech prior to Codesmith. So what inspired you to enroll in a coding bootcamp in 2020?
Yeah, thank you. I think the biggest thing was just the ability to create. I had worked in tech a little bit. My degree was in accounting, and I graduated in 2020 from Howard University. And a lot of the clients I'd worked with were tech clients. And so I got used to really understanding how they worked, as well as just using different technologies as well in accounting that's kind of similar to coding, but you can't really build anything. And I realized that wasn't really a skill. And during the pandemic, there was just a lot of free time, and I kind of was going back and forth of what would be the best way to use this time that I had. And I figured learning how to code instead of studying for the CPA would probably be the same. If I use the same amount of hours, one would give me a skill I could really use immediately and build things, as opposed to one that is only really in a specific area that I can use that skill. So that's kind of what led me into tech, was just the ability to create things on my own and really develop a skill in the 21st century.
There are so many coding boot camps out there now, especially online programs. So what stood out about the Codesmith program?
I think it was the hard learning aspect of it. A lot of the other programs I did look at had a similar sort of feel to traditional school that I'd gone through all my life, of just kind of like with the assessments and grading, and just sort of their approach to learning. Even sort of like the more like team and project-based learning has become more popular now. But I think Codesmith's approach of more like pair programming, and we only give you high level information and it's on you to kind of learn. And they preached how they're teaching you more how to learn than more to how to like just write code. That was the biggest thing I was looking for, was really to like, how do I become a better learner? And I think that where Codesmith kind of stood out from the rest.
And what were your career goals when you started the coding bootcamp? Like, were you thinking of becoming an entrepreneur, or are you kind of going more towards just like working for a company?
Yeah, I was definitely going towards just working for a startup, honestly. Because I had just graduated that year, I kind of knew it may have been harder for me to kind of sell my experience to a larger company. But I also wanted the experience of just like working hard and like working for something I believed in. So my goal was really to just work for a bunch of startups that believed in me and that I believed in their product. And the sort of work-life balance for me wasn't that much of a sort of concern. I just really wanted to be a part of something that other people were passionate about.
Did you have the idea for Heads before you even came to Codesmith?
No, I honestly, I feel like I kind of just like was in the right place at the right time. My co-founders, Mike and Ramteen, they came up with the idea, and I just happened to meet Ramteen in Codesmith. I was a fellow, and he was one of my residents, and we kind of connected. Our third co-founder, Mike, was Ramteen's roommate, and Mike came up with the idea. They're both music producers and instrumentalists, and I was just the engineer. I had working at Google at the time, and so between that and Ramteen working at a startup, we just started like building really fast, sharing our knowledge from the different places we were working at the time.
Having gone through this whole process of the coding bootcamp, then working as a software engineer, and now working at Heads, a project you started, what do you feel like the benefits are of going to a coding bootcamp like Codesmith when you become a tech entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think it's the going back to just like understanding how to learn and like anticipating the failures and like looking forward to them. That's what I honestly enjoy. Codesmith is definitely a fire hose of information, that especially like the first month to 6 weeks. But you're very surprised how much you actually retain after that. And it's not so bad. So I think it kind of trains you to embrace those uncomfortable situations and kind of go for it, understanding that you will eventually figure it out in the end, even though it seems impossible right now or even the next 2 to 3 weeks. That and then kind of like doing that again in the hiring phase of like what seems impossible and then you suddenly have a job. I think that kind of just like compounded on me and um yeah, it's kind of enjoying that ambiguity of whatever challenge is coming towards you. The stuff that they taught us 2 years ago is still the things that me and my team use today. All three engineers at Heads are Codesmith grads. Our other engineer, Nicole, she was also a fellow, and then Ramtin was a resident. But yeah, it's just the main stack of probably majority of the front ends you see out and interact with today.
So I've heard that the Codesmith admissions process can be pretty rigorous. I'd love to know, in your experience going into Codesmith, did you feel like you needed to know basic coding or other tech skills to just get enrolled there?
The CSX program is perfect for getting into the program. I really don't think you would need any other resource to get in, and it's a free resource that Codesmith provides. Um, and studying that, you do start to develop the habits, and once you go to the workshops, um, it becomes much more clear as to what you're trying to do.
And now you are a prep program instructor at Codesmith. So kind of piggybacking on that last question, do you have any tips for these incoming applicants on how to prepare for Codesmith?
Yeah. So yeah, I'm an instructor for JSB, JavaScript for beginners. And I would say just like completely dive in and bet on yourself. It's definitely a hard journey, but it's great. Codesmith is a great community. It's really the people that make it that much better. Whether you go to an easy parts just workshop online or you enroll in an actual course, you'll definitely meet one or two other people who kind of align exactly what you're trying to do, whether it's change careers or move to a different area or whatever it is. There's definitely those people who have those similarities, and I think you should just dive into it. If you're kind of like going back and forth, it's definitely worth it.
Since you did the online bootcamp version of Codesmith, did you feel connected with your cohort and instructors since it is an online community?
Absolutely. I think my time period of doing the online may have been a little different just because it was in the middle of the pandemic. So a lot of people were just home a lot more versus like if I were to do an online now, I'm not really sure if I could say the same thing. But we always hung out, whether it was before or after class or in the weekends. Everyone was there to either just hang or go over extra problems. Literally could not have asked for a better community and experience going through the program.
And did you find yourself at Codesmith working and learning alongside other entrepreneurs in your cohort?
There was a few other people that also had ideas of companies they wanted to start or thinking about taking that leap towards the end. But I would say majority of the people I met were just trying to get a software engineering job, including myself. This was never like a goal of mine. Like 2 years after Codesmith, I want to start a company. It just happened to be the case. But there are definitely a few people that had these aspirations.
Overall, what kinds of projects did you end up working on at Codesmith?
Yeah, so me specifically, I worked on a lot of NPM packages that could be used on the client side. So one thing was testing. That's kind of a pain of a lot of engineers. So me and my team, we built a testing application that can help generate those for you. Um, and doing that allowed us to really understand a lot more of how an application actually works when you have to generate tests for someone else's application and really understanding the base framework. And so that was great. Also built a couple of just main applications that send data back and forth, understanding forms and validation. and just kind of like your standard web interactions. And we built like 3 of those type of applications and then 1 npm package, which helped me tremendously sort of like feel more confident going into these larger code bases.
Do you feel like those Codesmith projects kind of helped you conceptualize and create your own company, Heads?
Funny enough, I mean, it's very similar. The scale is much larger now than the Codesmith project, but it's basically the same thing. Like we have an MVP. This is like what we want to create. Once we do that, we can talk about stretch ideas. So in a way, I mean, yeah, I have 2 other partners. It feels very similar to what I was doing exactly 2 years ago today. Actually, I think I was doing my production project. So um, yeah, what you do in Codesmith is definitely what you're going to do in the real world. And if you start a company, you're going to be starting from scratch, just like Codesmith.
I would love to know a bit about career services at Codesmith. Obviously, you became a software engineer after Codesmith and now are a tech entrepreneur. But looking back, do you feel like their career services also sort of prepare you to become a tech entrepreneur?
They help you understand a little bit of the sort of the mystique specifically in like just the business of tech and how like the salaries with stock options and understanding what seed rounds are and things like that was definitely crucial for a lot of people. I don't know if there was specifically any direction to like, oh, you should start a company. If you want to start a company, these are some steps you should follow. And I do think they're probably going to start doing that as more alums start to create companies and leave sort of the places they're at right now. But I think from the baseline level, they definitely gave a lot of information to where like if you were to start a company, you wouldn't be totally confused on sort of like how things go and where you would need to look to start that, whether that's Y Combinator or like some other bigger funds. They definitely have people out there who can connect you, which is great.
That's cool. Yeah, it sounds like they have a great network there.
Yeah.
So I would love to hear about Heads. Just tell us a bit about what people can expect from it.
Yeah, so Heads is it's a decentralized audiovisual curation community. So we live on the Ethereum blockchain, and essentially what we do is just we create a monthly playlist that's a 10-minute music video that we sell as an NFT. And so what we'll do is we'll get a big name artist or really a producer to provide an audio sample to the community. And so the artists so far have been Masego, Mr. Carmack, Daniel Allen, who's pretty big in Web3 right now, and Josh Pan. And so they'll provide a sample to the community, and then there's just producers all over the world, and they'll flip that sample. So they just have to include 1 second of it, and they'll submit it to us. So we take in all these submissions, usually between like 25 and 40 submissions. We anonymize the submissions, and then the way it's decentralized is the previous tapes that we've sold, those count as sort of like voting tokens. And so previous holders can vote on these submissions. And so they vote for their favorite ones, and we turn it down from 35 or 40 to 20 submissions. We give those 20 that the community liked the most back to the curator, so Masego or Josh Pan or Mr. Carmack, and then they'll pick the final 10. And then my co-founder Mike will make the music videos in 3D renders in Blender, and it ends up becoming this like 10-minute music video NFT. But it's a way for us to onboard a lot of artists onto Web3 or just different ways of sort of making a living off their art, and as well as validating them as sort of music and art that people appreciate and like. And then they get onto these bigger platforms that are currently going on in the Web3 music space.
That is so awesome and so current. I feel like you guys are really on cutting edge technology there. Since it is like Web3, blockchain, I mean, all of the newest stuff, do you still use any of like the Codesmith like tech stack in building this?
Oh, for sure. I mean, we pretty much use only the Codesmith tech stack. I don't think there's anything that we don't use that they teach at Codesmith. The only thing that Codesmith doesn't teach is the blockchain stuff. which is essentially just like a different database that you're talking to. But as far as like we use right now, Web 2 and Web 3 front ends are basically the same. There's not too much different. It's just the back end's a little different. Instead of like saving your data to Instagram's database, you're saving your data to the blockchain. So Codesmith prepares you really well. I think that's the other benefit of learning JavaScript is always like the first language to get integrated into these new tech. So if you want to get into AI or AR or blockchain, there's always going to be a JavaScript sort of version of a way to connect and build things on those applications compared to maybe a or more backend languages. It may not be the case. So I think that kind of just like validates the boot camps even more for being able to like build fast and really understand what's going on, as well as being able to be sort of a pioneer in the space. Crypto's maybe, if you've been in it 5 years, I guess you could say you're a veteran at this point. So to be doing it for a year and a half, you're not really like too far off from everyone else. So having that Codesmith mindset of just taking in information, it makes it a lot less daunting.
That's so cool. Great advice in there. So as you said, you went from Codesmith into a software engineering role at Google nonetheless. So I'd love to know, thinking back on that journey, do you recommend that other recent bootcamp grads maybe do like a software engineering salaried role first before they like launch their own company?
I would definitely recommend that, at least for a year. That's what me and my co-founder both did, just to really understand how, not to say that the production project you make is not like a real product, but really to understand how a real engineering team works when it has to communicate with the business team or product manager or a marketing side, and meet deadlines and kind of like really work through those team interactions, where things are going well, where things are going bad, or if you're running behind. Just all of those situations I think are good to learn and experience before starting a company. And it really depends on kind of what you're trying to build. If it's obviously very cutting edge, I would say probably a startup would probably be more advantageous. Just learning how to build fast, but like still safe. You're not going to be as safe as a Google or a Meta or an Amazon when it comes to like how efficient and locked down their things are. But a Google, Facebook, or Meta can't push out new features the same speed that a startup can. So definitely, if that is a goal of yours, really understand like what is my end goal, or what do I really want to learn before hopping into this. But the key thing I would say is like, don't stay forever. You're never going to know everything. So I would say, yeah, a year or 2 years. But after that, you should definitely go for it.
I think I know how you're going to respond to this next question, but I just got to ask it. At this point in your tech career, was Codesmith worth it for you?
Oh yeah, definitely. I probably would be an accountant somewhere if I didn't join Codesmith. So totally worth it.
And my last question for you is, do you have any pieces of advice for tech entrepreneurs who are just kind of like where you were about 3 years ago, like just starting out? Maybe they have an idea already, but they just need to get all those skills.
Yeah, I would say just take it day by day and sort of create an actionable plan for yourself. But understanding that like nothing will actually go according to plan. But that's not an excuse not to make a plan. So I think that would be my advice. Just definitely go for it and bet on yourself.
Well, that's an excellent place to close this Q&A. Thanks so much for talking with me today. Cam, so much great information and great advice here. And thanks to all of you for watching. We're going to be posting a transcript of this video interview on the Course Report blog with contact information for Codesmith, just in case you're interested in applying for one of their upcoming cohorts. And in the meantime, follow Course Report on Facebook and Twitter. And if you're a bootcamp alumni, don't forget to post a review of your coding bootcamp experience on Course Report. Your review is a huge help to anyone thinking of getting into tech today.